Parliament, not some clique of bankers meeting in an oak-paneled boardroom in Threadneedle Street in the city of London behind the scenes.
Right.
No. And what do you want to do? You probably need £1 trillion of cheap credit, 0% credit, and rebuild the entire railway system of Great Britain, rebuild your port systems, reindustrialize the country. That's ultimately what it is.
Well, they spent $1 trillion on saving the banks, didn't they? What did that do, Webster Griffin Tarpley? That's the magical figure there that you just pointed out, £1 trillion.
This is going to go straight into real production, £1 trillion to rebuild this decrepit apparatus which we have, the British railway systems, the ports, the water systems. There's a great canal system in Britain, but it goes back 200 years now. It's too narrow. It's got to be widened. You could get that going again, and obviously go for high technology, high value added, high capital intensity, high energy intensity, the kind of specialized production that you could have in Britain. It's probably the most educated workforce in the world still.
Right.
So why are we letting this tremendous asset of humanity go to waste?
Too many questions. It doesn't make sense in some regards, Chris Bamberry. I'd like to ask you on another front about the right for people to come out to protest, which has involved, again, arrests today. Tell us about that and the way the police has handled this protest, and not only just this one, the previous ones. Today's protest has resulted in over 50 arrests at this point.
The police handed everyone a leaflet, or told everyone if they deviated from the route the police had set, they would be arrested. That is a restriction of people's right to demonstrate. And we're seeing this more and more as well. And in particular, the police were terrified about a link-up between trade unionists, working people, and anti-capitalist protesters and students, because they understand that is a dynamic that's happening here, because people are beginning to look for alternatives. And people are asking questions about the system. And people might ask a question, why on this same day, in the day after our austerity budget, Britain shuts down the Iranian embassy in London? Because it seems to me that by digging up another war, or the threat of another war, it diverts people's attention. Maybe Britain should be wondering why the Iranian economy is doing rather better than the British economy, because it deals with countries like India, Brazil, Russia, China, than where Britain is tied to the United States. But this is because there is a neoliberal religion in this country which no one dares in the establishment to question. And neoliberal does not mean liberal at home in terms of protest and people's rights. We are seeing a cracking down, as we've seen with the camps. Now we are seeing an attempt to evict the camp from outside, the Occupy London camp from outside St Paul's, and from the building they've occupied, an empty building which has been empty for almost a decade in the City of London. So there is an attack on the right to protest. But it goes along with the austerity measures, because if you want to slash living standards, then it has to accompany that. And we should remember, one of the speakers mentioned the 1930s in Germany. It was a government, forgotten government by a man called Brüning, who, after essentially they scrapped a democratic government, who implemented austerity measures, cut living standards in a way that actually prepared the ground for Hitler, and also began to whip up nationalism. Hitler benefited from austerity.
Right.
We're going to see this happening in this country as well, I would predict, in terms
sorry to
of
jump
people
in here,
looking
Chris
for
Bamberry.
scapegoats, and
Quickly,
Iran is a scapegoat today.
Quickly, if you can, we're running short of time. Based on the strategy that you're laying out there somewhat, is the government of the UK going to improve its economy based on some of the details you just provided us? In 30 seconds or less, if you can.
No, it's not. There's no sign of any economic improvement. And George Osborne had to admit that his promise they'd pay off the deficit inside the lifetime of this government before the next general election. He had to admit yesterday that is not going to happen. There is no sign of an economic... He said there is no light... someone in the Treasury said there's no sign of light at the end of the tunnel. Britain is heading down the same road as Greece if it continues on this cut austerity budget. And I think people understand that, and that's why they were out today protesting and striking. And I think we're going to see more of that, because people understand that we're heading on the road to disaster in this country.
We're going to end it there. Thank you very much. So much more to talk about. Chris Bamberry there, commentator, political commentator from London. Thank you, Webster Griffin Tarpley, author and lecturer from Washington. And Carol Gould, wish we had more time for your statements. American broadcaster there, giving her statements from London. Thank you for watching another edition of the Press TV News Analysis.